Hi guys, Hounds Armory here, and today we're answering the question of what happens when your hammer shot just isn't quite thick enough. Of course, we know the hammer shot, it's reliable, hammer primed, great sidearm, easy to holster, one hand usable. And especially compared to something like the Fort Victory, this is pretty chunky, but not as chunky as this. Let me put the hammer shot down. This is the Nerf Alpha Strike series, right? Alpha Strike Hammerstorm. It is the massive, and I mean massive, hammer primed pistol option from the Alpha Strike line. And to me, this is confusing that it's an Alpha Strike blaster because this has at least twice as much plastic as any of the other Alpha Strike blasters, except for probably that weird pump action one I don't remember the name of, and the Flight. Between this and the Flight, I'm a little encouraged that there might be some usable blasters coming out of the Alpha Strike line, because this is held together by screws and the Flight is flywheel. So we have some good some mechanisms we like, flywheels and hammer prime, and some better construction methods using screws coming out of what's supposed to be the budget line. And granted, these are the two most expensive blasters out of the Alpha Strike line. I think the Flight's about $20 and this got me about $15. But I do think they're better blasters than things like I think it's called the Fang, and I think the Jolt reskin's the Stinger. I don't know, I'm not a fan of Alpha Strike, with the exception of this blaster. Now, my first reaction was, this thing is huge, like massive. I've seen, of course, pictures and other people's videos and noticing that this is a big blaster, but this is a large blaster. It almost gives me like a Destiny or Mass Effect feels with those large hand cannons you get. So technical overview, hammer prime, of course single action trigger, probably spring in the grip. I haven't opened this up yet to check. I'm assuming it's the same internals as the hammer shots, which might mean there's a lot of good upgrade options for this. Things like the blaster parts kit and the Orange Modworks hammer and trigger metal kits, which are great. We have an 8-round injection molded cylinder with a lot of space to front load. And that was my other concern with this blaster, is there's a lot of things in and around the cylinder. Whereas on things with like the hammer shot and the Sweet Revenge, most of the cylinder is open with just this little bottom support, which makes those very easy to reload. And with there being so much plastic around the cylinder, I was afraid this was going to be hard to reload. But given how much space you're given here in front, it's very easy to reload. I find myself tending to reload kind of overhand like this, kind of basically reloading into those two positions, just because they're the most accessible. Though I would bet you could reload the whole cylinder without having to rotate it if you're willing to kind of bend a couple darts into place. Of course, that being said, because it's a hammer prime revolver, you can hold down the trigger and just pull the hammer and rotate the cylinder through to reload. And that's just something I've built the habit of for using hammer shots for most of the time I've been in the nerfing hobby. Over the rest of the blaster, we have Nerf rail up top, Nerf rail on the bottom, and an N-Strike barrel attachment up front with some 8 holes for dart storage up here, which is nice because it does mean you can carry a whole nother load of your Hammerstorm on the blaster. I tend to not like carrying darts on my blasters. I don't really know why, it's just kind of a personal thing. And mostly because I usually am wearing my battle belt with a dump pouch on it, so I just throw darts in my dump pouch if I'm running something like 2 hammer shots with a Hammerstorm, which I will be running this at the next war I get to. Let's talk about some comfort things. It's very front heavy, like you would expect with something with this much plastic on it, but the handle is very comfortable. I wasn't expecting it to be that great given how blocky it looks, but to be honest, if I'm gonna rank all the Hammer Prime Blaster's handles, which in my opinion have some of the most comfortable handles just because of the trigger placement in relation to the rest of the grip, and how nice that is for the human hand, I would put this about third. I think the most comfortable one is probably the Sweet Revenge and the For Victory. Following that, I'd put this third. It's a little less bulky and slightly oddly shaped than the Hammer Shot, and it's bigger than the Double Strike, which I struggled to get my hand on fully. I've used my pinkies hanging out. And there's plenty of room down here for people with bigger hands than me. The hand guard's nice and wide. I think this will fit most hands, with one exception. The actual thickness of the trigger guard here, where your finger falls through to contact the trigger, is about an inch thick, whereas on the Sweet Revenge, the For Victory, the Hammer Shot, and definitely the Double Strike, it's closer to about half an inch to maybe like 5/8 of an inch, which gives you plenty of room to get your finger to the trigger nice and comfortable without kind of hitting any sharp edges. Whereas this is an inch thick, so it's almost straight walled off the grip, which is comfortable to just sit there and practice good trigger discipline, but it takes a lot more finger to get to the trigger. I have very thin, long fingers, so this is fine for me. In fact, it actually puts the trigger right on the pad of my finger, which is right where you want to contact the trigger with your finger. Whereas on the Hammer Shot and the Sweet Revenge, I find I can over curl a little bit. But I can definitely see this being a problem for people with shorter fingers who might struggle to fully make contact with the trigger using this blaster. Overall, I think that's my only complaint of this blaster. Yes, it's huge. Yes, it wouldn't make a good sidearm because you can't really holster it, but there's enough plastic here that you could cut some off, and I probably will end up minimizing this down a little bit, at least cutting this bottom section off so I can holster it. Because it really is a good blaster, and I really do like it. And I'm sitting here trying to think of more things to say, and I can't think of a bad thing to say. The one idea I had from the second I saw this, though, has to do with how much space is in this cylinder slot. Now, if anyone saw my most recent loadout video, I love the Mega Hammer Shot. Currently, I'm having some performance issues with mine, but I'm working on fixing those. But I love the idea of the one-hand, last-ditch, repeatable Mega pistol, especially for HVZ, because sometimes Mega is a special ammo type that take out super zombies, or at LARPs where they might do more damage. I think it's a very useful thing to be able to do. Even at Nerf Wars, I know in the Carolina Nerf Association, we play a game called Net Game, where there's a net in the middle of the field, and different ammo types you get into the net score your team different points. Things like rival rounds and elite darts and half darts don't score points, but they do tag out the other team. I'm pretty sure it's an unlimited life, an unlimited respawn game. So something like a Mega Hammer Shot and even things like Master Keys are very good for that game, because you can pick up those point scoring ammo types and throw them in. Now that's a long rant to say, I'm pretty sure this blaster was designed as a Mega Blaster. We've seen things like the Hammer Shot and the Sweet Revenge that are basically the same thing, with 5-shot cylinders that ended here. That's because there's a whole lot extra plastic on this thing that you don't need for an elite dart blaster. What you do need it for are Mega Darts that are longer. So my theory is, and this is just a theory, it's not confirmed anywhere, this is just me musing, and probably a mod I'm going to do right after I finished filming this video is this blaster was a Mega Blaster. And they realized how bad performance is out of Hammer Prime blasters with Mega, because it's a much bigger ammo type, and it's hard to get enough power to make it feasible without doing things like I have done, getting a Blaster Parts metal kit and putting a 12-kilogram spring in it. But the space here gives plenty of space for Mega Darts. And the barrel attachment point is a separate insert. I don't know if you can see the seam there, but I think, of course I haven't opened this up yet, I think you can open up the blaster and just lift this barrel attachment piece out, leaving a hole big enough for a Mega Dart. Well, that's my scheme with the blaster, and that's my overview. So let's go to some firing footage and maybe jump into the workshop and look at the insides. So now let's take a look at the internals of the Hammerstorm. Now, the first thing I want to say is that there are a lot of different pieces of plastic on this shell. Both the black and the gray parts of the grip are separate, as well as the orange bit up at the front here. That's going to make paint jobs very easy. Because frankly, I probably wouldn't paint those parts. I like, oh, sorry, get the camera. I like grays and blacks on my blasters, as well as a good orange tip. So I would probably leave it. That's awesome. Now, like I suspected, the barrel attachment point just lifts off and gives a nice open hole. I might not put that back on. And now we get to the part that I'm kind of bummed about. This looks nothing like a hammer shot, except it's almost exactly the same. The mechanism in here, in the way the hammer works in conjunction with the trigger to have a sear surface, and the spring dropping down here with a little arm that's pulled on by this nub here on to pull and rotate the cylinder, is all exactly the same as a hammer shot, but mirrored. So while the mechanism's the same, we can't use any of the parts our hobby has produced for it. We can't use any of the metal kits. We can't use any of the resin cast kits like those from Silver Fox Industries. So Hasbro kind of shot us in the foot here. I'm sure it's not going to be too long before people adapt and make at least different hammers, whether they be 3D printed or resin cast, for this blaster, though I'm hesitant to guess that we're going to end up with metal kits for it, at least anytime soon. The other things that's different is, in here, if you lift this off, you can see this looks very familiar if you know much about hammer shots. It's just a mirror image. The rotation mechanism on the cylinder is different. It does still have a clutch, so you can rotate the cylinder independent of the actual rotation mechanisms. It does come very well greased, but it has this almost two-stage rotation system, which is probably more reliable, because as it goes forward, it will shift the cylinder over a little bit and at least line up the rotation finger better for the next tooth. Yeah, so putting it back together, it's gonna slide together just like a hammer shot. You put the little support tab in that hole, if I can do it on camera. And then it just goes in the wrong way. Sadly, this is really a bummer. And then you have this little keeper for the front of the cylinder that, can get stuck if you're not careful. Now I've made a mess of this. Well, I'll fix this off camera. That's an overview of the internals. I'm really bummed this is different than the hammer shot. I was hoping we'd be able to swap parts in much easier. Let's go to some firing footage and finish up the video. So now for a quick firing demo, I'm gonna start with using the included darts for the Firestorm, or Hammerstorm rather. And it's about what we can expect out of Elite darts. Not bad, but not exactly accurate or consistent. I will say the stock 8-round cylinder is very nice. So let's go round 2 with some Adventure Force waffles. These are some of the best darts you can get. And immediately, oh, misfire there. Immediately, performance is better. Just, you know, more accurate, better darts. So yeah, again, the wall's about 40 feet from the camera, so we're getting like 30-foot ranges out of the Hammerstorm, which isn't bad stock. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. That was my review, overview, musings on the Alpha Strike Hammerstorm. Again, this is a great blaster. It's a load of fun to use, and is pretty much right what you would expect out of the box. Of course, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.